serious, have you ever had to run for your life? What happened? Story 1. A small plane crashed exactly where me and my two friends were standing talking at an airshow. We all saw it coming at the same time and without saying a word, ran in different directions. Some small pieces of debris hit the back of my leg, but we weren't injured. The pilot was killed instantly. Story 2. On 9/11, was in a subway stuck in a tunnel 2 blocks north of the towers when the South Tower collapsed. Tunnel filled with smoke and dust. They evacuated us out onto Fulton Street, very close to the North Tower right before the North Tower fell. Stood there looking up at it as it was coming down. Realized how easily I could be squashed by debris, so turned and ran. Edit. Thanks for the comments below. I'm fine. I was luckier than most on that day and didn't see anyone get hurt. Friends of mine saw people jumping from high floors to avoid the fire, and that must have been hard to take. I definitely breathed in some dust. When we first exited the subway onto the street, it looked like it was snowing. That was the dust cloud from the South Tower collapse. But the people who got sick are mostly the first responders who were on the site for days digging. Story 3. Without going into all the details that make people uncomfortable, the gist is that I was pretty much held captive for a year by a bad man. The day I finally escaped, he had pressed the remote to close the garage door. I was racing my off towards that sweet, sweet sunshine. I had to drop down, roll under the door as it closed down on me. For a moment the door almost trapped the small bag I'd hurriedly packed of my only possessions on earth, which was strapped over my body, but I managed to wriggle free. I made it. I don't think I looked back for a whole mile while I ran to a far bus stop. Terrified he'd be behind me again in his truck. This time, for whatever reason, he let me go. Story 4. My ex-boyfriend lived next to a big park with a wooded hill on it. It was in a not-so-great suburban neighborhood just outside of London. Would often sit up on the hill at night smoking and watching dawn come up. One night they're sitting around a fire we made, and these 4 chavvy kids materialize out of the bushes and ask for a smoke. It was me, my boyfriend, and one of his friends. We're all pretty high and relaxed, so we decide why not. The kids then decide they'll mug us. They ask for our money and the rest of our weed. No offense, yeah, but you're like 10 years old, my boyfriend says. We gave you a smoke, so why don't you just leave us alone and we'll all have a good night. At that point about 10 more kids emerge from the woods, like a pack of pygmy headhunters, or the Lost Boys in knockoff Market Stall Burberry. I can see my boyfriend and his mate trying to decide if they can fight what has now become a fairly large pack of feral children while high off there. The main kid tells us he has a knife, and we all turn and run, the kids on our heels. We manage to outrun them because they are tiny if violent children, and make it back to his house, and spend the 2 hours before dawn paranoid in case the cut-rate children of the corn saw which house we went into and try to break in. We all decide never to speak of it again, although my boyfriend does tell the story in the pub the next week, but neglects to mention that our ferocious muggers probably would have spent our money on sweets and comic books because they were tiny evil children. Story 5. One time I was playing football with a couple friends from middle school, and I accidentally whacked Mike in the head with the ball. Now Mike had some issues, mainly anger management. I'm pretty sure his dad hit him. From the way he talked about his family, Mike also worked out, at way too young of an age. To be honest, Mike scared me. So I accidentally hit him in the face, and his eyes light up with some demented fire. He gives me this crazy half grin half snarl, then charges. I about wet myself. Then I ran for my life. I was a pretty fast sprinter, but wasted over long distances. Mike was also the fastest kid I knew. As I ran, I came to the horrible realization that I couldn't outrun him forever, and therefore I was going to die. Well, I wasn't going to go out without a fight. I stopped running, turned around, and punched him as hard as I could right in the face as he ran full steam into my hand. The look he gave me was like a kicked dog who didn't understand what he had done wrong. It was then that I remembered we had been close friends, and he was a really nice guy and a bit of a jokester. Also, my hand broke, and his face was unhurt. Story 6. I have to thank Bear Grylls. Really, it was thanks to one of his episodes I was zapping one day, and the episode caught my eye that I was able to not be kidnapped. One day, I was coming home from school. I was 16 and I had club practice. The classes were over already, hot summer, so I was alone. My bus stop is like 1 kilometer away from my house, so I had no chance but to walk. Everything was fine. I was listening to music, not paying much attention to my surroundings. My town is quite nice and crime here barely exists, so I was feeling safe. It's kind of a given for a girl, since I don't have to look over my shoulder every time anyway. A car passes by me. The driver says something I couldn't get. I still had my headphones and parks a bit ahead, in front of a barbecue restaurant. I thought, oh, he's a customer, I guess, and I continued. That guy starts the engine again, drives a bit ahead of me and parks a few meters ahead. It was strange. It was when my adrenaline started kicking in and I remembered the show and the tips. I thought I should test if he was following me and I purposely ignored him. He did the same thing, drove a few more meters and parked a bit ahead. Okay, it was serious. I looked around to check if I could run somewhere. Too many secondary streets with barely no space to move. He would trap me. The best thing I should do was to keep moving on the main street. And no one was around me, so yeah, I was scared. As soon as I passed by him again, he drove further ahead. It was my chance. I knew I couldn't lead him to my house. I took another street and hid in a building, wishing he would just lose track of me and leave. 10 minutes later, I left and tried to go home. Unfortunately, he had been driving in circles, trying to find me. He stopped in a crossroads and came out of the car, getting closer to me. My heart was almost jumping out of my mouth. If I continued forward, he would catch me and throw me in his car. I looked around, there was someone, finally, it was a cousin, and walking to the opposite direction of him. I ran over to her and said, "Where are you going? Let me go with you, don't ask questions now." She was immediately in alert and asked me calmly to tell her what was going on. I said in a few words while we walked. She immediately turned around, screaming, "You FCKNG son of a BCH. The guy got scared, ran back to his car and scrammed. It was one of a day. Edit. Yes, I am a girl, and this really happened. I can't recall the episode or the series, but it was thanks to Bear Grylls' tips in one of his shows that I was able to save myself. I do have to admit one thing, I have no idea how I was able to keep my head cool enough to think. I was almost on the verge of panicking, which would be an understandable reaction to being followed by a creep in a car. Story 7. When I was 5-ish, my entire extended family went out the Hamptons, fairly posh area of Long Island, New York, to a house my aunt was renting for the 4th of July weekend. Night of the 4th, we have a barbecue, and go out onto the beach to watch the fireworks. My mom's cousin's husband, however, had brought his own sack of fireworks. We start setting them off, everything's cool, until the cousin's husband drops a lit firework into the sack of fireworks. Suddenly, we were no longer on a beach in the Hamptons. It was Omaha Beach, June 7, 1944, with explosions everywhere and rockets screaming down the beach. Everyone runs for their lives. All the parents grab their kids and start running for cover, ducking down behind dunes and cars as fireworks go flying right by us. Finally, the fireworks die down, and my mom has to pull away from throttling her cousin's husband for nearly doing to my extended family what Hitler couldn't. Edit as pointed out below. I screwed up the D-Day landing date. Oigavolt. Not gonna edit it, so all can see my shame. Story 8. I guess it's not a run for my life moment, but when me and my ex broke up that night, had friends over, and so I'd gone to a park nearby to clear my head and calm down. Saw a guy walking around, so decided to leave. Felt him grab my arm, instinctually kicked backwards and connected with his knee. He let go and I ran faster than I ever have in my life. The complete 15 to 20 minutes back home. Story 9. So, I was maybe 12 and my friend was 10. We were dumb kids in general. We were biking around town on my friend's chopper bike. We were small enough where both of us could fit on the seat and still pedal. We were heading towards downtown, which is divided by a set of train tracks. I noticed the train, so I stopped, but my friend kept telling me to just go because it was far enough away. After bickering for a few seconds, I said it and stomped on the pedals to speed across the tracks. All the cars that were stopped laid on the horns. Same with the train. We almost got hit, like, train missed the back tire by maybe a meter. After we made it across the tracks and took in the fact that we almost died, we hightailed it into the woods because we were afraid of getting in trouble. We spent maybe like 45 minutes freaking out before we agreed to never talk about it again. So now I'm telling the internet. Story 10. Was a college kid working during the summer. Worked on a dynamite gang digging holes in hard rock for a construction company. We were usually very safe. Drill holes in rock, set a charge, cover the area with a bunch of logs chained together and a heavy blasting mat. Set it off. The dynamite goes humph. The logs and blasting mat lift up a couple of inches. We take off the covering and clean rocks and debris out of the hole and then start drilling again. One time the rock was extra hard. Our blasting was just getting little bits of rock and we were falling behind schedule. The foreman decided to put in a larger than normal charge. This was not all that unusual. We drilled more holes than we normally did. We set the charge. The dynamite went BBBOMMMM. The logs and mat went about 6 feet up and all of a sudden the air was filled with XXX large size rocks. Headed for us. We scattered in all directions. I hid under a truck. Another guy hid in an old chicken coop. The other people were fast enough to get completely out of the area. The foreman decided that he could live with very slow progress on that particular hole. TLDR, dynamite is powerful, but rock can be powerfuler. Story 11. 2 words. Irish cows. We were visiting a historical site and needed to cross a field. Needless to say, the cows were less than impressed. They followed us to our car and hung out at the fence for 10 or so minutes. Edit. I feel like I should add that they did in fact stampede at us. 60 BC. My father may have accidentally set them off in our direction, and the only reason we are alive did not go full Lion King is because my mother screamed and clapped at them, so they split like a knife through butter. Further, we did not make it to our destination, but my father did, and he walked back to the car without issue by pure luck as the cows were being fed. Don't, or even look funny at with Irish cows, ever. Story 12. I wasn't really at any risk of dying here, but it felt like it when it happened. As a kid 8 to 9 we lived in the countryside and we would mess around in the fields of nearby farmers. They would get pretty pissed. My brother hid a box with 5 in it and buried it somewhere in a field. He made a map of the location so we could do a treasure hunt. We couldn't find it anymore and spent enough time for one of the farmers to notice and started yelling at us. We just ran for our lives because we thought we'd get into so much trouble. After getting lost trying to avoid the farmer, we went into a small forest trying to find our way out. When we saw a grass field at the end of the forest, we were so happy. We walked through the grass field until my brother turns around and panics. He yells, "Get the back." I had no idea, so my brother just runs past me and I'm terribly confused. I looked what he was running away from and I see a horse running at me full speed. Barely got out without injury and managed to trace our way back without any issues. Never told my parents about it to this day. Story 13. I was briefly chased by a bear on a family camping trip when I was around 12. I was one of the only kids on the trip, so I got pretty bored and went into the woods by myself. about half a mile, and I hear this deafening scream from a couple of girls I had passed by earlier. When I looked back, I saw this bear running towards me, and I booked ID immediately. I can't remember how long I ran for, but I do remember hiding behind a giant rock once I ran out of breath. I sat there as silently as I could for what seemed like hours until I got the courage to emerge from a hiding spot and made my way back to the campsite. Got back and there was a park ranger warning people not to go into the woods because of a bear sighting. Haha, you don't say. In hindsight, the bear probably wasn't chasing me. I'm guessing that it just got spooked by the two girls and ran away in my direction. Still, it was not cool, man.
Next time I go into the woods, I'm definitely gonna bring someone with me. Ideally someone slower.
Story 14. At a New Year's Eve party in high school, someone pulled a gun and opened fire in a house. They didn't hit anyone, but we kicked the guy out, and then of course someone called the cops. We were out in the boonies, so it had to be someone who was actually at the party. Cops show up and just start sending people home when some nozzle points me out to the cops. He's the one who had the gun. As a drunken high 16 to 17-year-old, I booked it right off into the woods. I'm a lifetime soccer player, and I was wearing jeans and a dark-colored shirt. I saw the silhouette of their flashlights behind me, but I remember not looking back not one time. I kept telling myself, if they catch me, my entire life is over. I have never moved with such purpose. My phone's GPS put me about 3 or 4 miles in the middle of nowhere. I called my mom, who came and got me from another dirt road I managed to get to. Those cops with their gear and stuff never had a chance. Story 15. My friend Chrissy and I went spray painting. I was a teenager, driving my mom's car. There was a junkyard with a massive white fence around it in our neighborhood. Chrissy hopped out of the car and started spray painting our names in black spray paint. While I kept a lookout, I saw the gate start to open and yelled for her to get in the car. The car came at us full speed. I put my car in reverse and sped backwards down the street. If I even let up on the gas, the other car would ram into us. They were inches from us. 2 guys were in the other car. The passenger had a bat he was waving around. I backed out to a busy street. Praying not to get hit, they followed. I put the car in drive and sped through our neighborhood. It went on for a few minutes before they ran me onto the sidewalk. They got out and banged on our windows to open the door. We were screaming and crying. We refused to open the window. The passenger guy kept ducking down and popping up and hitting the windows with his bat. Long story short, we got out and cried and begged for forgiveness. They made us swear we would repaint the entire fence. They made us give them our parents' phone numbers. They took our spray paint. When I got home that night, my neighbor came over and said, "There is spray paint on your car." I didn't notice that they had spray painted on the passenger side with our own spray paint. My neighbor removed it with lighter fluid. I lied and said I didn't know where it came from. Funny side note, Chrissy wrote Chrissy the Pimp on the fence. This guy we knew named Tom used spray paint to change it to Chrissy the Pimple. A few weeks later, it was painted over. We never went back to paint the fence. The junkyard guys never called our parents. Story 16. Was attacked by a wild boar. It was terrifying because I realized that no matter how hard you run, if an animal is intent on killing you, it is going to catch you eventually. Unless you somehow succeed in scaring it away before it's lost in that blind killing mode, or you find something to climb that it can't, there is nothing you can do but fight and hope you're strong enough to deter it or kill it before it kills you. Story 17. I had to walk for my life. When I was 8, I lived in Colorado Springs on the military base. I always loved running around the woods by myself, exploring and finding cool places to make forts. One day I'm following my normal path up a mountain and rounded a corner when I saw it and stopped dead in my tracks. I'll never forget the soulless eyes of a mountain lion with its face buried eyes deep into a dozen insides. Face stained red. It stops eating and looks up at me, dripping in blood, and snarled. I fought the urge to run because I knew if I did I would die. Lucky for me, when I slowly backed up, it stopped making any noise. Looked back at its fresh kill and continued on eating. I noped the out as slowly as possible. That animal was beautiful but terrifying, with no barriers and alone. Glad I saw it but never want to again. Story 18. Yes, I had to run for my life when I was in Girl Scouts once. The group was on a hike and heard gunshots nearby. We got told to run by our scout leader. We booked it, but one of the adults ended up being in pain from running in fashionable shoes. Story 19. Mikey threw a football really hard at Garth's and Garth thought it was me, so he chased me. Garth is really big and I was like 14. I don't know what he intended to do if he caught me, but he heard Mikey yelling that he was the one he threw it, and not me, so he eventually stopped chasing me at the age of 13. I went down to the mall with my mom. We went there because she had to do some household shopping, which I was not interested in. I begged and convinced her that I could go to a few stores on my own that I was interested in. So I did, and I was having fun until this dude started stalking me. He was a full-grown man trying to talk to me. He was saying inappropriate stuff, and he was literally following me, just a few steps behind me every time. I was so scared, I didn't have the guts to confront him. I eventually ran from him and he started walking real fast behind me. Anyway, I managed to find a mall security lady who helped me. She kept me company till my mom showed up. Another security guy went looking for the guy, but he left the mall very quickly. I never walked around in the mall by myself again till I think I was about 16. LOL. Story 20. Can only go into this one in dramatic length. Hot summer of '92 on the west side of Detroit. Great start. For teen friends, and I smoked one and walked over to a park next to a cemetery near 7 Mile and Losser. We sat around smoking and talking about bands we liked as we did so. Two kids came around and were ambling about, just prowling at a slow pace back and forth from a distance, as one of them carried a large dense piece of tree branch bark that he used as a walking stick. We thought nothing of it. One of the kids asked us what time it was, knowing now, when I'm in that situation, it'll simply state time to be going, and from what we could tell it was starting to get sundown twilight in the sky, yet we just sat on this cement play barrels and yacked. At one point, we were at a lull in the conversation when we suddenly heard a huge crackk, followed by a dense thump. We all looked up to see our tallest friend lying face down and dazed in the park chips, and one of the kids was winding back from the direction he swung his now broken bark branch thing. There was an odd moment when we were all paralyzed with confusion and disbelief at what just happened. The words WHWH were frozen on our lips. Just then, you could hear a commotion from the distant trees from a sharply ragged sloping incline heading off into the cemetery. There were many shadowy figures yelling and coming down the hill towards us. The two kids returned, shouting to them, and waving their hand over to have them join them over here. Over here, we got M, they're coming for us, run. We went into full panic mode at the thought of being ambushed by a gang. We scrambled like mad to get to the chain-link open gate that bends into an aisle and bends into another open gate the way small enclosed baseball fields have out into the street. Now this next part, I truly regret having to mention I was second to last to leave. I should have SHOULDV turned around and helped the one who was last to leave, the tall one who just got clobbered. To this day I hate myself for being such a dumb, selfish, panicky animal for not making the effort to do so. Instead I freaked and wiped out as soon as my legs hit the next form of terrain past the chips, the sharp pale gravel leading to the fence entrance. I spilled onto the gravel and split my knee and my hand. Meanwhile, my injured friend was staggering behind me on uneven footing on that gravel to get out. All the while I could hear the shadows hooting and tromping up closer behind us. The run down Clarita Street was the longest I ever had. We must have passed a street or two until I was the first to hit on a sterling new revelation. I started to shout help. Then my four friends joined in a choir or please. This is the part that messes me up as we are running and shouting under the dark canopy of trees at dusk. We quite literally saw houses promptly close their front doors and turn off their porch lights. I mean it, at least 3 or 4 houses started to blink out as a response to our cries for help, as if to say not here, you don't exist. It was horrifying. We finally got to the street we needed. Our injured friend ran past his dad and his smirking drunk friend looking like Dale Gribble. You kids got in a little tuffle, and ran into the house with his close friend. The dad ran in and then came out with a rifle and grabbed his buddy to get in a pickup and roar off. They came back later and said they saw nothing. The remaining 3 of us went a few doors down to the other friend's house, and his mom came out and applied some basic ointment and band-aids to my hand and the wound through my torn jeans. Never thought we'd see the other 2 kids again since we just made friends with them 2 weeks prior, but eventually we caught up with them at their new pad in the Cass corridor, which was surprisingly more of a sleepy ghetto than a powder keg of a hood. It was events like that, along with many other discouraging aspects, and being jumped on my front porch by complete strangers at the only party I ever threw that same summer, that got me fed up with everything I had going up until that point. Once I started to see graffiti promising race war retaliation for Malice Green. Keep in mind this was after the riots in L.A., following the Rodney King trial on areas usually untouched. I felt hiding out in Ferndale and then down to the corridor was my safest option. Edit naturally for clarity. If you read this in its entirety, thanks. Story 21. I was about 12 or 13 years old. One time I'm walking to my psychiatrist for my weekly appointment. It's a half-hour walk, and after dark, I enjoyed walking, especially after dark when things were quiet, peaceful, and slow and no one else around. No, I didn't live in a dangerous neighborhood, nor did my walk take me through any dangerous neighborhoods. As I'm about halfway to my destination, a car, a Cadillac, comes driving down the street. Some people, both male and female, in the car are sticking themselves halfway out the windows and are taunting me and jeering me as they drive by. A bunch of people in their late teens or early 20s. I ignore them and keep on walking. About a minute or two later, the same car comes down the street again and those people are jeering me and taunting me again. I don't know who they are, maybe they live in the neighborhood. I still ignore them and keep walking. Another minute or so goes by and again they come driving down the street, taunting and jeering me. Now I'm worried. They're circling the block over and over, deliberately focusing on me. As soon as they reach the corner and make their turn and are out of sight, I duck behind some bushes in someone's front yard and wait. The car comes again down the street, this time, not seeing me walking down the street. They're not jeering, they pass right by me in my hiding place and turn the corner. I think they think I finally reached my destination, one of the houses on the block, and went inside and as a result, drove away. I thought wrong. Stupidly, I leave my hiding place and go back to walking on my way to my psychiatrist. I should have stayed there behind those bushes much longer because I hear the car approaching. They spot me and start taunting and jeering me again. They turn the corner. This time I run towards my destination, but I know I won't get far before the car and those kids catch up with me again. So to that effect I decided to hide again behind the bushes in front of an apartment building, this time resolving to stay there for good until the thugs in the car gives up their searching for me. I'm hiding there behind the bushes for not long, maybe about 30 seconds or so, when the guy whose apartment it is pops out from his apartment, asking what I'm doing hiding in his bushes. At first he probably thinks I'm a burglar or something, but I explained to him how I'm walking to my psychiatrist and how I'm being followed and harassed by a bunch of kids in a car, which was why I'm hiding in his bushes. the guy can instantly tell from the tone of my voice and my facial expressions that I'm telling him the truth. He can see how scared I am. Just then the car comes down the street and pulls right up at the curb directly in front of us. They look at me and the guy I'm with. Not a mean-looking guy in his late 30s, early 40s, but tough and serious-looking enough. He's not wearing a shirt. But he's wearing a sleeveless undershirt which reveals that this guy's upper body is very well-toned, slightly muscular, and no fat. I'm looking at the car and I realize that the car doesn't look so full now, it's missing a few people inside. The guy I'm with just gives them a mean stare. He asks me, "You know them?" I explain that no, I don't know them at all, I haven't the slightest idea of who they are. Just then, as the car is sitting there, about 3 of them approach walking from the other direction. The car was traveling from east to west. Those 3 were walking on foot from west to east, so that's why the car seemed not so full. They were looking to escalate the situation. They weren't satisfied with just driving by and taunting me, so they changed tactics. A few of them got out of the car up ahead and started walking towards me while the ones in the car took another turn around the block. Their plan now was to physically trap me in between themselves and their car. Perhaps grab me and drag me into the car with them for whatever reasons. But seeing my tough guy guardian angel with me, the kids walking towards the car instead got into the car and it took off. The guy offered to stay with me for a little longer, or if I wanted to duck into his apartment to stay there until I was sure that it was safe to continue on my journey. I had a feeling that this was the last I was going to see of those guys and their car, and I didn't want to be late for my appointment. So I thanked the guy for his offer but declined, and decided to head on my way. The guy went back into his apartment and closed the door. I looked at the closed door and hoped that I didn't make a mistake by turning down the guy's offer of better safety, because I was still scared. Thankfully I was right about not seeing the car again. The rest of my walk I was unmolested. I reached my psychiatrist's office. I told my therapist about what happened. He insisted on calling the police. The police came and took a report from me. That's the last I heard of it. On my way back home, I usually took the same route that I came from, up the same streets. But this evening, I varied my way home, taking some different side streets to walk on. Never saw that car or those jerks again. Here is, via Google Street Search, the very spot I hid. That door was the guy's apartment. That grassy area behind that low black metal fence on the left was where the bushes were that I hid behind. Back then the bushes in that spot were way tall, wide, and thick, enough to hide a 12 to 13-year-old kid behind. If I hadn't ducked behind those bushes, I would have walked right into their trap and God knows what they had in store for me once they had me trapped. Story 22. I don't know if I would have died had it gone wrong. But last Thanksgiving a group of us were chased by an angry swarm of bees after opening a grill they had made a huge hive in. It was pretty scary being chased by something I can't really fight back against. All of us were stung multiple times, and we had the good fortune that none of us were allergic. Story 23. This is sort of silly, but it felt like I was running for my life because I was 9 years old. Our elementary school took us to some space-themed camp, and clearly the people running the thing enjoyed with kids' heads. During the day it would be fun little science activities, but at night got weird. Some of the dorm walls had glow-in-the-dark creepy stuff written on them about murder. Some bunk beds had spooky ghost stuff carved into them. Somebody said that they found a knife in the bushes. Rumors of a yellow-eyed man start circulating. Nobody bothered to calm any kids down though. One night my friends and I were wandering around after dark. They let us do that, until it was bedtime, and one stops the rest. He's frozen, looks scared shitless. He points down the road which is not lit very well. BTW, says he sees 2 yellow eyes, and books it in the other direction. We all follow. It was absolutely horrifying for lil kid me. Now as an adult I'm almost entirely certain there was no man, and that my friend was seeing things. Those camp people though, the teachers too, one of them made fun of me for crying for a long time after the camp. Like, I thought I was gonna die. Multiple times, and this was like my 2nd year in a brand new country. I wasn't used to it, let alone being miles away from my parents. LMAO, I actually ran for my death once. Unknowingly, I was in Tokyo trying to catch a flight to Osaka for my job at the time. I was late and they wouldn't let me board. So I ran onto the tarmac and chased the plane like a dummy. I was determined to get on the flight. Next thing I know, the plane cracked sort of in two and skidded. People died. Story 24. When I was around 12, I was staying all night with some friends. We were outside goofing off and dancing on the picnic table in her front yard at night. Her parents had left to go get us pizza, so we were all home alone. As we were just having a good time, a car pulled up and a guy got out and started chasing us. We all ran inside as fast as we could and locked the door. It was terrifying. Story 25. Yes, once, I've told this story before, I was a junior in high school. We had just finished our finals week and my group of friends and I decided to throw a party at my place. It was a nice sunny day and the pool I had back then was the perfect place for an all-out summer fest. Anyways, my place wasn't far from the school. Maybe like a 30-minute walk, so we decided to leg it from school. We stopped a convenience store for some beers while the rest of our grade gathered with the rest of the alcohol. It was a small class, 35 or so students. Anyways, on our way back we had to cross in front an old abandoned building. One of my friends, being the dumb teenager that he was, chose to throw an empty beer bottle through one of the window holes. Of course there wasn't an actual window there, but he still thought it'd be fun. Not 30 seconds after he nails the shot, a dude that was squatting in there came running after us, throwing small rocks and pebbles at our group. Of course we ran and he went back inside. We thought that was going to be the end of it. About 2 minutes later we were all still kinda laughing at the whole ordeal. This dude cuts us off with his old beaten down car, no idea how he had one in the first place, but there he was. He gets down with a machete and starts yelling at us. Still think it's funny. Almost like that "are you not entertained" scene from Gladiator. Suddenly he just charged at us and we bolted out of there. Long story short, he chased one of my friends for like 10 minutes, gave up and went away. I don't remember how, but our group split up during the whole shebang and one of us managed to get into the convenience store and call the police. They never showed. I managed to call my dad, who then picked us up and took us to my place where everyone was waiting for us. Party still happened.